Americans want their president to be evangelical. Christians want the president to be pastoral. We like that. But that isn't really the job assignment. The job assignment is to keep us safe. That's the primary thing. People knew. This was back in '07, I think, this accusation. People knew the accusations against the president before he was elected, and they said, actually, we care about security. Actually, we care about the economy. This is not a poster boy election for the evangelical world.
Polls show a majority of conservative evangelical Trump supporters have found ways to stand by their man, even amid scandals from multiple allegations of sexual misconduct to the alleged hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, the porn star who says that she had an affair with Trump in 2006, just after Trump's third wife, Melania, gave birth to his fifth child. One wonders just what will be in those Easter Sunday sermons this morning. And joining me now is religious reform activist Frank Schaeffer. He's the author of the book, Why I Am an Atheist Who Believes in God. And Frank, thank you for being here. Happy Easter to you. And you wrote a piece that is titled, This Easter, America's Evangelicals No Longer Believe in the Risen Lord, but in the alt reality of their porn star prez. Please do explain, sir.
Well, thank you, Joy, and happy Easter to you, too. And what I would say is that I grew up in the religious right. I was a religious right activist in the 70s and 80s with my father, Francis Schaeffer, who was one of the founders of the religious right along with Jerry Falwell. And back in those days, long before I left the religious right and became a progressive activist who tends to vote for Democratic candidates these days, our emphasis was on personal morality and accountability. And of course, everything has changed now. And what has happened is that evangelicals have folded the belief that Trump has been given to America by God into their theology. So you can no more argue with an evangelical today about his presidency or whether he is a good person or should be president or what he does or his brutality or his lies and convince them of it. You'd have the same difficulty as you would in arguing them out of a theological position. What secular observers don't realize is this has become a matter of theology for evangelicals. And as such, all the political arguments, in fact, facts themselves, do not apply. Evangelicals are absolutists. They don't believe in paradox. You know, you mentioned my book, Why I'm an Atheist Who Believes in God. That title denotes a sense that there is paradox in this world and that people who are certainty addicts tend to do bad things. For instance, I've never heard of anybody blowing up an abortion clinic or a white police officer shooting a black man or someone bombing a mosque after they shout, "But I could be wrong." And that's the problem with evangelicals today. They never think about the alternative. And so since Trump has been accepted as part of their absolutist theology, there's no arguing with it, and that is why they're going to support him to the bitter end.
And to your point, if you look at the polling, a new Pew poll on Trump's approval rating, white evangelicals stand out among even other religious people. White mainline Protestants net support Trump, but it's more almost 50-50. Black Protestants overwhelmingly oppose, including black evangelicals, and Catholics, you know, sort of almost 60-40 are against Donald Trump. Why is it that white evangelicals, if everyone has the same sort of core theological basis, are alone in being so absolutely supportive of Donald Trump despite all of his flaws?
Well, it's not just the white evangelicals, the conservative Roman Catholics like Laura Ingraham, for instance. You know, she had me on her show a few years ago when I had written a book about my son being in the Marine Corps. So she thought I must be more conservative than I am because I respect military service. But look at her. She's a convert to Catholicism. And here we are in Holy Week, culminating in Easter, and she chooses this time to mock a teenager who stood up against gun violence. Juxtapose that with the last thing you had on this program before talking to me, and that was a report on Pope Francis. Here's someone who had breast cancer who survived it, Laura Ingraham did, saying after she had breast cancer that she was going to re-examine her life and dedicate herself to higher things. Look at the fall that she has taken, now a poster child for imitating Donald Trump's ugly intolerance. Imagine that in Holy Week, at the time when Christians around the world are saying he is risen. Truly he is risen, answers the other Christian. And who do we hate next, is the evangelical or conservative Roman Catholic view, to the point of mocking kids who stand against violence. Think about that, Joy. That's where we are. The mentality today is we follow Trump not just into the gutter with his porn star presidency and the filth of his own past life and his mob connections and the rest of it. We even now find these leaders following him into the intolerance where it is okay in their view to mock a teen who stands on violence. That's where we are this Easter morning. So when saying Happy Easter, it's not a happy Easter. We are in a moment of betrayal of the teaching of Jesus that was the watershed. I speak of this as a Christian, the watershed in the ethical development of human consciousness that put your neighbor first and lifted humility up as something to be admired. We have an arrogant president who disrespects people, and those who follow him are now imitating this vile behavior in Holy Week and at Easter, no less. That's where America is this Easter morning.
And I have to play, on that note, Jerry Falwell Jr., who styles himself as a, I believe, as a Christian, as an evangelical. He would, I believe, consider himself to be a moral man. This is him on CNN on Wednesday. This is post the Stormy Daniels interview on CNN, talking about Donald Trump and throwing Bill Clinton in.
I still go back to the issues. I think we, just like with Bill Clinton, many of his supporters stuck with him no matter what he was accused of, even rape, I believe he was accused of, and it's, you know, it's a hypothetical question, so I can't really answer it.
But hypothetically, you would be okay with even that? Is that what you're opening the door to? Rape?
No, I'm just saying I would have to wait and see the circumstances to make that judgment.
So just to be clear for our audience, that was Jerry Falwell Jr. saying that he couldn't definitively say he would stop supporting Donald Trump if he was accused of rape.
Well, of course, I knew Jerry Falwell Jr. when he was a young man because I spoke at his father's church, at Liberty Baptist, when I was in the religious right myself. And if you had told Jerry Falwell Sr. that his son would be talking this way 30-some years after Falwell Sr. formed the, quote, moral majority, he would have been shocked. But the fact is, Joy, where we are this morning is not that Trump sleeps with, has sex with porn stars, or that this is the problem. The problem is his policies, his racism, his bigotry, his hatred, separating families, grabbing 7-year-old little girls away from their mothers, saying that he's going to nuke people. Forget all the porn star president stuff for a minute. That's just a good handle on how far these evangelical self-righteous people or the Laura Ingrahams of this world will go. The real issue is his policies toward the least of these, that in this epiphany of wisdom, Jesus held up as those we should treasure and mark and judge a civilization by how they treat these folks. So when you're living in a country where a black man can be shot with impunity and nothing happens to the police force that does it, we have a problem. And when you're living somewhere where the dreamers are being separated from their families, we have a problem. That's where the Christians have denied Jesus this Easter.
Yeah, indeed. Frank Schaeffer, it's always a pleasure talking to you. And you're right, it's problematic. We need to have a moral reawakening where we'll have you back, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back on and talk about the other side of this, because there are things like the Poor People's Campaign that are trying to bring back the other side, which is also rooted in Christian principles. Thank you, sir. Happy Easter.
Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up in our next hour, the return of Roseanne. More AM Joy after the break.